My name is Louis Harris, and you are tuning into the Record in Progress podcast, which I created in the wake of the 2024 presidential election because I was shocked at the results. But what that told me is that I can do more to create a world that is better for everyone. So the purpose of this podcast is to create understanding by hearing different perspectives with the hope that we can all find a way forward together. I am privileged to be with a friend of mine in the community, somebody who we both worked in the community pushing forward democratic values. What is your
Hi, Louis. Good to see you again. Congratulations. This is awesome. I'm so glad that you got a platform now. My name is Joseph Erickson. I live in Portland, Oregon, and I'm a filmmaker and educator.
excellent? A filmmaker. Can you tell us a little bit about the film that you're doing?
Yeah, totally. I'm producing a film called Class Wars. And when I was a teacher, I was teaching during the pandemic, and I was one of these people that they would call like a critical race theory teacher. I was building what we call ethnic studies. Really, it's just like,
I know it.
the basic history and critical thinking. Had a lot of fun doing that. After George Floyd was murdered, we had a big need for critical education. A lot of people sold books from Kendi, Robin DiAngelo. Our curriculum, we put it out there on Google Drive, use our book list. It was the first time a lot of white people were like, oh shit, we see this now. Think about the civil rights movement in the 60s when people saw on TV what was happening and it hit them. That whole thing blew up because we had a week where everybody was like, yay, teachers, because it was terrible to teach during it. It was terrible.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah,
The nurses, the teachers were.
we had that 1 week of teachers of yours, but the backlash after that was not what I was expecting because it became vile. And so like the nurses, like we were on the front lines of everything. We were doing the hardest work, but our curriculum, our teaching was going into people's living rooms.
Right.
And so I'll never forget, I was teaching ethnic studies, doing a lesson on prison abolition. We were talking about Angela Davis, the carceral system and economics, a high level high school course. And I had a student whose dad heard in the background, and he just immediately, I could see him chopping onions in the kitchen. And he heard me quoting Angela Davis, and he's a big old white guy, threw his knife down, stared at the screens. He's brainwashing you to be a Marxist. He needs to apologize. And I'm over here like, this is literally, it's like, this is history that we're teaching. This is critical thinking that we're teaching. And that started for me, like the wave. I ended up moving to Portland, and I was teaching in a suburb there. And then what happened was the students were recording our lessons and they were sending them to their parents who were part of Moms for Liberty.
Wow. So you were frontline
I was frontline.
critical race theory pushback.
I had it right to the point where a student recorded a lesson that I was doing, sent it to their parents. It ended up on the forum. And within an hour, I had an old man knock on my door and threaten my life. Entering my classroom, finger in my face, tore down my pride flag, tore down my Malcolm X poster, threatened violence against me. And I was new to the school, didn't know anybody because we're all wearing masks. There's 2,000 plus students in the school. There was already a shooting threat in the morning.
I did not know any of this happens.
No, I don't. It's in the movie, but I haven't talked about it publicly. I know history. I know what this looks like. I have PTSD from gun violence in the home when I was a kid. I saw the guy, a 6'4" white guy wearing all gray, like a gray sweatsuit. Wasn't a student. I thought it was the custodian at first.
Right.
He shoved his phone in my face. It was shocking because I'm like, and it was Facebook, and I'm like, I wasn't on Facebook at the time.
Right.
He's like, are you this part? Are you just starts? And I thought I was going to die. I said, this has gone too far. I went to my union. We had really bad leadership and found out that the guy that actually did that was part of the athletic department in the school. And he had been there for 35 years. He was quote unquote untouchable because their athletic program. It was Clackamas. It was like a big money conservative.
God.
It was right on the outskirts of Portland in like just like a big money, very conservative. The people that don't want to live in Portland because they don't like because they're, I don't know, for all of the reasons that I will not understand, they kind of build these suburban communities where they're insulated. And so if we're talking about things that make them uncomfortable,
Right.
they have big feelings.
Yeah, of course.
And they respond with force. My specialty was the rise of fascism in Europe. I start seeing this stuff happen and I go, this has to stop.
Yeah.
I got to do something. So I started making the film about it to get at the heart of that problem because I was one of, I think at the end, it was at that time I quit, it was 600,000 teachers quit, and for a panoply of reasons. So I wanted to find out what was the heart of the destruction of public education. Who is allowing this to happen and who is benefiting from it? It's sort of become like a Roger and me kind of bowling for Columbine where it's a teacher on a journey I didn't know where I was going to end up. I've ended up all over the country, all over Europe. We're focusing a lot on Oklahoma because they have the model for what education is going to look like in the Trump administration. But I ended up all the way in Germany at Einstein's house, talking to the head of the Einstein Forum about the denazification process and how education and propaganda are part of this. Shit is scary. Yeah. We're still working on it. The log line is we're getting to the heart of the problem with public education.
Okay. Because that's one of the things that is essentially under threat. Some people would say it's under threat under the new administration.
It has been.
It absolutely has been. And that's contributed to a lot of the issues we see in society today.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so that's who you are. How do you identify?
I'm a pre-gentrification New Yorker.
Okay, excellent. This next question is to help people understand you as a person, because everything is economic related, unfortunately, in this world.
Yeah.
What is a credential you use most often to sell yourself on job application?
I have a dual master's in film theory and teaching. Okay. There's an interdisciplinary skill that crosses cultures. Few people understand, because you understand with that, you understand propaganda fully. If you are a film theorist, because you also then understand how signs and symbols influence people, but then you also understand the learning process with teaching. Teaching is a science. It's easy for me to decode propaganda with that background. I see these two things working together.
And how it's teaching people.
Yes.
You have an excellent perspective that is a privilege for us to have. So getting into the meat of the questions, how did you vote in the 2024 presidential election?
Yeah, I voted for Dr. Cornel West. Yeah.
Talk to me about it. Like, do you have any thoughts about it? Do you feel any sort of way about it? Do you feel like other people feel so?
I had the privilege to vote for Dr. West because I live in Portland, Oregon. I was lucky enough to meet Dr. West and put on a tent for him. I got to vote for a guy who is a hero of mine, a person who inspired me to be a teacher 10, 12 years ago, somebody who I've always admired, somebody with a lot of integrity. I knew he wasn't going to win. And if I lived in Pennsylvania, I would have voted a different way. But I voted in Portland, Oregon. I voted for him because I want to live in a country where a guy like that matters and has influence more than business people or cops.
Which you mentioned say even more than professional career politician.
I think Trump is not a professional career politician. Right. I think we're at the point with politics where Hillary Rodham Clinton was without doubt the most qualified person to run for president. Kamala was pretty qualified. Unfortunately, those things are less important. And I think that Trump proved that.
Sure.
I think Cornell's a master communicator. That campaign never went anywhere. A lot of it was they didn't have any money. Right. They didn't have any funding. Sure. It's the same with Jill's campaign, although I think the Green Party is going to have a little bit of a coup here in the coming days, and we're going to see a reformation. Well, I think young people look at it, and I'm a teacher. So the students, the people now who are 27 years old, 18 to 27, I was their teacher. Mm-hmm. I know how to talk to them. I know what their concerns are. Mm-hmm. Trump, Biden, Kamala, they didn't really speak to the concerns. I ask students all the time, what do you see about the future of education? Who do you like? Their answers are like, Bernie's cool, but he's too old. AOC might be cool. Some are like, Kamala seems cool. Not like Trump, but I didn't talk to a lot of right-wing kids.
Sure.
But yeah, they look at it because they're seeing a house on fire and everyone's talking about money instead of putting out the fire.
Right.
And we don't look at it from that perspective because they're disenfranchised.
So when you say you're talking about the majority,
I guess the political establishment.
There are some clear distinctions we have to reconcile because I was so surprised by the election.
Oh, were you really?
I was putting every ounce of energy that I could into the Kamala Harris campaign.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And
I'm sorry.
But when it comes to my ethos, I just wanted people to vote.
Totally. Right.
I just
that's the big thing. Mm-hmm. I haven't looked at the numbers lately. What was the overall turnout?
So great. Not that person.
But we know you and I both worked in local politics. We look at the voter turnout and it's abysmal.
I know that the narrative was abysmal this year, and a lot of Democratic voters, established Democratic voters, did not actually vote. And so it skewed some of the gains of Trump in directions that we didn't believe it could go, like Latino man and Black man and the like, right? What are three feelings you have about the results of the 2024 presidential?
I was thinking about this question a lot. I asked my daughter, and she's 8. She had like she was very quick. Scared, frustrated, angry. She's 8.
She understands the political realm.
Well, I'm her dad. She was marching in parades with us 6 years ago, and she's already a little activist in her school, raising all sorts of hell. I'm very proud of them. But I feel suffocated, like being buried alive.
Yeah.
You know, the walls are just, you and I both have PTSD trauma backgrounds. When I'm in my worst place, it's when I feel trapped.
Sure.
I felt that way after 2016. I did not expect Trump to lose this time. I was surprised he won the popular vote. I predict Trump to win all the swing states, but I thought Kamala was going to win the popular vote by like 8 million. And then we could have like a good, like sort of revolutionary conversation about the electoral college finally.
That's it.
After all this shit.
Again,
It's been 24 years since, you know, you and I like, were around 9/11, like Bush, like all that. And, but yeah, I just feel fucking suffocated and frustrated, you know, and I do feel, I'd say feel activated. And I do in a way. I do feel optimistic. Sometimes you have to rip the Band-Aid off and see what you have. And I remember the last time that Trump won, there was a lot of people saying, I don't think this is our country. He's not our president. Do you remember?
I was one of those people.
Yeah. I think this time people say, maybe this is our country.
So that's where I'm at.
This is what America is.
Right.
The Childish Gambino song. This is America. There's a lot of truth to that.
The quote I came up with in my grieving process was, I voted for who I believe America to be, and people voted for who they believe America is. That quote sums up that feeling for me. It just sucks because I see myself as one in a bubble who believed in the greater good, but was proven wrong. The legitimacy this election had versus the last election, right?
Yeah.
There was the electoral, the general mismatch, but this time he just blew it out. The Republicans blew it all the way.
They didn't have to do anything. They could just blow the microphone for 2 hours and still win the election, which is literally what was happening. Like that. And when that happens, you know, you have to reconcile with the fact that like, this is a big country built on slavery. Benjamin Franklin in the Constitutional Convention was like, look, we got to compromise because, you know, business. And that's this country. And it's not, I think we're brought up with a Hollywood version of it, but now as somebody who's working in Hollywood, like that is a dream factory, not reality.
Right. That speaks to another thing that all of the media said the polls are saying Harrison will win. Everybody was relatively sure. The endorsement differences between Hollywood elites and all that.
Sure.
Like, we're all in that bubble.
Well, it's because we have community. We're in the suburbs of Seattle. You know, I walk out the door and there's other families right next to us. When you live in places that are where you're siloed and really there's a few very small communities, maybe everybody goes to church and that's it. We see each other on a daily basis. I grew up in New York City. You get on the subway with 40,000 other people every day. You got 40 different languages and different shoe styles. And you just know like, oh shit, everyone's got their own thing going on. We just got to pick each other up when they fall because that's what we got to do as humanity. We owe each other. They used to call it the social contract, right?
Yeah.
What I've seen with students and the internet is now a place. We don't really understand that. I had a student say to me, why don't people talk about the internet like it's a place? That online community was able to silo those people. Right. They don't need to go out to get community. They got it right here.
Right. It's almost as tangible to the mind and how it perceives.
Absolutely. Yeah. It tells them it's real.
I'm so glad you said that because there's two things. The internet is a place. One of the things I'm writing about is that thoughts are real. Thoughts are manifest. Thoughts are material. There's a mechanism to increase the magnitude or strength of your thoughts in actual space. The mores and community we find ourselves create bubbles. They're actual bubbles, not theoretically or whatever, but tangible if you understand how to touch them and move in and out of them. Yeah, which some meditation. I'm glad you said that because that's a piece of our society we don't understand is real. And that's a function of our evolution of understanding not only the world around us, but ourselves. All of this is a function of that evolution, in my opinion. I'm really glad you mentioned that. Great point. Okay.
Yeah.
Brilliant man over here. So what do you fear most about the next Trump president?
I fear for my daughter. I fear for you. I fear for your children to focus on education and accept. I know exactly what their education plan is because I've been covering it in my film for the last 2 years and it's chilling to the core. It is going to have a chilling effect on teachers. It's going to have a chilling effect on students. It's going to have a chilling effect on trans people, LGBT people. It is a fear and force type of structure. I would ask people to look at, I know it's a little wonky, but your politician's favorite bullet points. House Bill 1775 out of Oklahoma. Oklahoma is where we've been focusing on. It is basically what we would call a laboratory state.
They're the ones with the superintendent reclaiming money, right?
Yeah, he's the bad guy in our movie, Ryan Walters.
Right.
He is in line to be Trump's next Secretary of Education. I snuck into a meeting, recorded a lot of shit for 2 hours before they realized that they kicked me out. You know, they were like, "Oh, this is got Michael Moore kind of guy." I saw them do things blatantly unconstitutional, blatantly illegal. Ryan Walters also, I think, most famous at this point for being the guy who spent $30 million of taxpayer money to put Trump Bibles in every classroom.
Right. Which they remove a portion of the Bill of Rights, Constitution.
They're just going to retcon the Constitution to be whatever they want. You know, they've done, I think people didn't look closely up at the Supreme Court and who has time, honestly, but you see where they've been moving toward abolishing the Establishment Clause of the Constitution.
Right.
They've effectively undone it. There really is no legal separation between church and state now. The church has its own kind of special, and this is a puritanical system that we're going back to. I interview an expert in my film and he goes, it's one of two ways this can go. And there's like this tech dystopian way. And then there's also this like going 200 years back into puritanical, patriarchal. You know, no, you didn't get a black person or a woman at Harvard for 200 years.
That's right.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And you and I thought, well, those days are long behind us, but like, man, those fucking people have money and they're angry and they're going to get that shit done one way or another. And it's going to cause a lot of kids to devalue themselves and feel dehumanized. Sure. And we're going to see more kids committing suicide, suicidal ideation. We're going to see way more homeless kids, trans homeless teens everywhere in this country. Poor kids are just fucked.
And that's so many people are going to be.
The future of education at this point, if it goes through, is privatization and essentially just saying to a family, well, we don't have school buildings anymore. We don't have those pesky teachers anymore. What we do have is this nifty tablet, and we're going to give you a coupon so that you have the choice of choosing your educational platform. And you keep going down the road with that, and you're going to have a day in the future, and that's already dystopian enough. Then they want it to be like Netflix,
right?
To the point where it's going to be like, well, do you want the ad-free version of U.S. history this year for an extra $14.99? That's what school is going to be. They tried a religious private school funded with taxpayer money in Oklahoma. They got shot down by the courts, but you know these people, they're just going to keep going with different versions of it.
Right.
And then if they don't get the ruling they want, they replace the judges. It's a corrupt system. It has been corrupted.
Well, it'd be interesting to hear, because even some people on the progressive left believe that our institutions are corrupted as they stand, right? And so I don't know if you've heard some of the latest things coming out, and I mean, you do because you've read Project 2025, but they're trying to undo some of those institutions. How do we reconcile that?
I mean, you have to recognize what their goal is first, and like their goal. And I mean, what do you think their goal is?
Do I think Republicans will war?
Yes, with Project 25, I mean, with defunding institutions.
They want to expand economic power and capitalism. Those are the main ones I'm worried about.
Yeah. And so, you know, how do you do that? And it's creating a system. And it's interesting because I don't know if they'll so much abolish it. I think it's more of a sabotage. Okay. I think people like Trump says, we're going to abolish the Department of Education. That wouldn't be in their best interest because they have that institution. They just go into it, sabotage it, and sell it off for parts. This is what Trump did. And this is how Trump has always made his money. He's a mafia guy. This is always what they did in New York. You induce, this is with Reaganomics, in New York City, has happened in the late 70s and 80s. You induce poverty to the point that entire cities like New York in the 80s, Detroit after GM left, Everett after Boeing leaves, you know, these sort of things where you get to the point where these cities are wiped clean of any services for humanity. They did this to New York in the 70s. And because they were like, well, we have a social safety net. We have people that we need help. We have a subway system. We have libraries. But capitalists don't want that. They want to own those systems.
Right.
So a way to own those systems is to get within them, sabotage them, then politically exploit the failure. Think of the post office.
I get it.
They go, oh, well, the post office is shit. Let's just have Amazon do it, which is what they're doing now. And they're going to do that to schools. So your schools are failing. So let's just give it to Jeff Bezos instead. And that's what they do. And if they have the institutional power, then they have all the levers of power. It behooves them to keep those institutions, but to corrupt them for their own purposes.
That's how we'll know.
It's like if somebody took over the fire department and said, we still have the fire department, but if your house is on fire, you have to pay for it now.
So what do you hope most about the next Trump presidency?
This one, what do I hope? God, I hope that people don't give up. I hope people are activated. And I hope that, here's what I hope. I hope the Democrats and the left and everybody who believes in fucking freedom and humanity and liberation gets their head out of their ass and gets on the same page. because we got to stop the infighting. So you and I have been in Democratic politics. It made me sick. I had to leave because
They get bad.
I have to go to school every day
Right.
and deal with the kids who are from these homeless families that these politicians are dehumanizing. And that I know that those kids, and I've already seen them, those kids grow up and then now they're in the streets and then they're addicts on the streets.
Right.
And then the same politicians come and say, yeah, we got to sweep them off. And I go, what are you doing?
Right.
Sorry. That's just what keeps happening. They either are stupid or have their head up their ass or don't want to solve it or think it is politically too dangerous to say it. Probably that one.
Sure.
And why is that politically too dangerous? Who's forming those opinions of people? When you walk by a homeless teenager and you think of them as a failure and they deserve that, who put that idea in your head to think of humans?
That's right. Because, well, not only humans, you don't know the circumstances.
Never.
Right? Like,
my parents were homeless.
well,
They're teenage parents,
well, I mean, divorce will do that.
Absolutely.
100%. And like, that's no choice of anybody but their partners at some point. So you're right. It is the societal attachment or the societal hardening of those beliefs that create the oppression where people don't actually care.
Correct. Because you can just write it off. We see this country's always done it with Black and brown people. They dehumanize. It's a political tactic because
dehumanize the other side and
exactly
justifies the bulldozing.
It is a trick. Anybody with half brain can figure it out. What I'm worried about is they're making it so people don't even have a half brain anymore.
Right. Right.
And they're just outlawing civic engagement and empathy and things like this in schools.
Yeah.
I mean, they literally have like banned not just critical race theory, they've banned social emotional learning.
Right. Right.
You and I are men. You and I grew up boys, men.
Absolutely.
We know what patriarchy does to us. They don't want that to go away. They make a lot of money off of that.
Right.
Of programming young men to be machismo,
Yeah.
They're the ones that are going to go get their arms blown off when I press the buttons.
That's right.
Guys like us are a threat to that system.
Right.
We're too smart.
Right.
They don't want that.
That's
We're
true.
out of line. You know what I'm saying?